everybody! So this is the end of the month, the last day of the month. That means it's time for my monthly video where I give you a summary of what I've seen this month because of the animated Oscar series and the 2 Star Wars films. I only watched 2 movies at home. They weren't part of those series that I've already talked about. So the first film I'm going to talk about that I saw in the theater is The Martian. This was directed by Ridley Scott, starring Matt Damon. I did a review of both the book and the movie, which I liked both a lot. It's a movie that you just want to cheer for. It has really likable characters. It has characters that even if they only have a small scene, I felt like I got to know them and they were fleshed out and interesting. And it's just a super likable, fun movie. The next film we're going to talk about is called Walt Before Mickey. And this, unfortunately, is not a strong film. In fact, it's really only good for an ironic kind of viewing, like so bad it's good. And you feel bad because they really, I think, tried. They had really good intentions, but the script is really bad. And the actors actually are okay, but it's supposedly the story of Walt Disney before he drew and created Mickey Mouse. There's just some insane scenes. Like, you got to see it to believe it. He has this like full-on panic attack about this mouse and like trying to get the mouse food and he's like talking to the mouse. Some of the characters are really embarrassing. Like there's this one that's obviously the big bad Jewish man that's really embarrassing. His accent, the way he looks, everything, it's not good. The next is The Walk, and this is directed by Robert Zemeckis about Philippe Petit's walk across the Twin Towers. And this is, of course, based on the book/documentary that won the Academy Award, Man on Wire. And Man on Wire worked because it focused on Petite, not on the walk. And this chooses to focus on the walk and less on Petite. And they treat it like this is this great work of art. And I'm sorry, I just don't buy it. And to me, this is a stunt. And they keep passing it off as this great feat of bravery. And I had a little bit of an issue with that because you're dealing with buildings that every time I would see them, they would recreated the Twin Towers, I would cry. If we're gonna make a movie about bravery done at the Twin Towers, heck, not gonna be somebody walking between a wire between the 2 buildings, as far as I'm concerned. That's a stunt, and it did take some amount of gumption, but that's not courage, and that's not a hero in my book. I think that a lot of it leading up to the walk is kind of silly. The accents, the story, it's just not great. I'm sorry. But the actual walk itself, as far as it feels so real and it's really exciting. So it's worth seeing for like a theater experience, but there were parts of it that made me a little uncomfortable. Next up is Bridge of Spies. And this is a solid movie. It's a good movie. It's very well directed. It looks really good. I loved like little details that Spielberg put in there. Like there's this scene where there's all of these reporters with the 60s, 50s, whatever, cameras, and you can see all of the light bulbs from the flashes littering the room. And I thought little details, it's so Spielberg to me, it's this attention to details. I thought that it felt really cold. It felt really, you could just feel the cold in a lot of the scenes. That was really good. And it's fine. Like I thought the first part is sort of a court procedural. It wasn't anything I hadn't seen before to me. It wasn't anything that would really gripped me. And then the second part is sort of a negotiations, diplomacy kind of a thing. And I have to admit, during that part, I nodded off twice. And it's because you don't really get to know the 2 captors that are involved in the 2 boys. I didn't feel like I really got to know them, so I didn't really care that much about what was going on. I mean, Tom Hanks is super good, and that's just what I thought. I thought that it was a fine movie, but to me, it was a little bit dull and a little bit conventional. And I was just disappointed because when you've got Steven Spielberg and you've got the Coen brothers, I just didn't expect to be saying conventional. Then I saw the Goosebumps movie, and I was too old to be reading the Goosebumps books. They were kind of just past me, and I wouldn't have been interested in them anyway. I wasn't into scary stuff like that. But I still enjoyed this film. I thought it was charming and funny and scary, but not too scary. I thought it sort of felt like what Pixels was trying to do, with these sort of creatures attacking and there being some comic relief, but I think it pulled it off much, much better. There are some of the CG is not great. and I did feel like it gets a little repetitive at points, where it's sort of like, here's monster A, we're running and being chased and fighting this monster, and then that one will kind of go away. Oh, here's the next one. And I did like the performances of Jack Black and the other cast. Then Steve Jobs, and it's a really entertaining film. It's my favorite Aaron Sorkin film. I'm not as big a fan of his as everyone else seems to be, but I thought that it was a little bit unfair because just some of the other things that I've read, if you look at my review, and I'll put a link in the description section, you'll see that I have a lot of quotes from people at Pixar that worked with Steve Jobs, and really he inspired them. And so I think it's a little bit unfair. I didn't know that it was about a true person, and it was just sort of this picture of this hardened executive or whatever on these 3 launch days. I think I would have probably really loved it, but it was really good. I mean, the acting's super good. The dialogue is really good. Okay, the last new movie that I saw in the theaters was called Woodlawn, and this was a quality film. This is a Christian film, but it was well made. The football scenes were really good. It's not as over the top in its evangelicalism, I guess, as some other Christian films. I thought the acting was solid. It was a pretty good story. I was impressed. It's not perfect. I had some feedback of different things I would change, but it's a step in the right direction for sure for Christian films. The last thing that I saw in the theater were 2 sets of films that were re-releases or vintage films. I saw on Back to the Future Day. I went to a marathon where I saw all 3 films, and they were so great. Especially the first one. It's just, I think, almost a perfect blockbuster film. It's so entertaining, and it's got something to say too, a little bit about, you know, coming into contact with your parents and sort of realizing they're humans and not that different from yourself, I thought. And then the second one is my least favorite, but it's still entertaining, and you know, it's still a Back to the Future movie. And then the third one is very silly, but I like that it's getting back to a small number of people. There's less plot holes, and you get more into a relationship story, which is what the first one had, the second one didn't have. Then the other movie that I saw that was re-released was the 50th anniversary release of My Fair Lady, and that was a total delight. The Lerner and Loewe songs, and you've got Rex Harrison, Audrey Hepburn, you've got amazing costumes, some of the best ever in the history of Hollywood by Cecil Beaton, great art direction, incredible attention to detail by George Cukor, director. It won the most Academy Awards of any film ever. It's 3 hours long, and it went by like that for me. Movies that I saw at home in the month of October, I saw The Extraordinary Tales, and this is also available in theater. I saw it on demand. Extraordinary Tales is an animated anthology film, so it combines 5 shorts into one film based on Edgar Allan Poe's stories. It's directed by Raul Garcia, and it has tons of filler. There's these long segments of this raven talking to these spirits in a cemetery, and it feels like they're on slow motion. It's very, like, it's so obvious they were trying to stretch this out to a runnable length, because there's also, not only is there that filler, but then there's credits that are fairly long for each of the shorts, and it's not like they're different people, it's the same people for each of the shorts. And so it's just like, oh my gosh, we don't need it. It's really not even hardly a movie. I thought that of the 5 shorts, I thought that one was really beautiful. It's sort of done in a film noir kind of style with black and white, and that was really good. Of The Telltale Heart, which is my favorite Poe story, I thought the 2 were artistically interesting but sort of flawed. There's one that has sort of a watercolor style, and it's about this red death, this plague that's coming into this sort of house of ill repute, I guess. And it's definitely got some major, like, adult content in that one, some nudity, some things like that. So be forewarned if you decide to watch it. And then there were 2 that looked really amateurish and really cheap to me. One of those has Christopher Lee's vocals, which is sort of fun. But overall, I'm glad I saw it. It's not terrible, but I didn't think it was very good, to be honest. The other film that I saw at home is called The Babadoo, and this was hugely praised to me last year. I don't normally go to horror movies, but I've been trying to expand a little bit, and I loved this movie. This movie was so good. It was intense. It was about grief, and they had just enough of this monster, the Babadook. And I thought the journey that sort of the son, you kind of go on with the son of, like, kind of hating him to like being on his side and kind of rooting for him by the end was really interesting. Bette Davis is the actress in it. She is so good. Director Jennifer Kent, I believe, was great. I mean, for her first time directing, it was pretty impressive. So if you haven't seen it, I'm normally a scary movie wimp, but I thought it was excellent. Films I saw in October. Let me know what you thought if you got to see any of these films. Put in the comment section. Thanks so much for all your support. And I look forward to November. November's going to be a slow month for me as far as movies because I'm doing NaNoWriMo, but I'm definitely going to see Peanuts. I'm definitely going to see The Good Dinosaur, and we'll see what else I can kind of fit in, but I'll do my best. So thanks so much. Please subscribe to my channel, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.